Here we go. We are live. So hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's live lunch. We are going to be hanging out for the next hour, talking all sorts of things. Who knows what's going to come up? Because this week it's not just the Green Umbrella team. We have a guest with us as well, the fantastic Julia Kermode from Iwork. So, Julia, welcome,
hello.
welcome. Obviously, we know who you are. A lot of people within the recruitment world and people from who've been working as contractors, that kind of thing, probably know who you are already. But let's imagine our audience don't know anything about you. Introduce yourself and what you're doing now.
How could they not? No. Oh, sorry, my earphone's just fallen out. Isn't that just typical? So yeah, I was for the last 7 years or so, I was running an organisation called FCSA, and one of the things that it does is accredit umbrella companies, so they test them for compliance. And as the pandemic was going on last year, I kind of started thinking, well, I'm not doing enough to help people directly. So I'm not helping the workforce directly. So whereas I was supporting umbrella companies and accountancy firms that support freelancers and contractors, I kind of felt like that wasn't enough for me. And, you know, pandemic, everyone starts questioning what they're doing. What do they want to do? And so I thought I want to set up something to help these people directly. So I set up Iwork, launched in December last year. It's an online information resource, everything relating to, well, I particularly care about agency workers because there is no set body that looks after all agency workers. So that's one of my passions. And the other one I really care about is newly self-employed people. And the reason why I wanted to target those two quite different audiences in some ways is that people are having to find new ways of working right now, and by virtue of that, we know, because we've been in the recruitment sector for a long time, that there are a lot of complexities around it, and there's a lot of stuff that maybe people new to different ways of working might not already know. So that's what I wanted to do, was provide these people with information so that they then are better informed and less likely to be exploited. And I don't mean deliberately exploited, but if you don't know your rights, then you could be exploited.
Cool. So there is something massive that's been happening in that world for the last few years that lots of people have been talking about, that is really, really dull. So we don't want to get into it too much, but IR35 is this massive topic, and we just agreed we weren't going to talk about it. But yeah. I just want to mention it, because if you are working as a contractor and you're working for a contractor and you only have one client, I think that's probably the most basic description I could use. And you don't know what IR35 is, you've never heard of IR35, please, for the love of God, reach out to Julia.
I know more about it than I ever dreamt possible. So yeah, and it's really easy to find me. You can just email julia@iwork.co.uk. It's really, really easy, or Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever. But yeah, I'm happy to help. And if you don't know what it is, basically it's a tax change. It's coming in April, and it affects whether you think you're genuinely self-employed or not. And it takes that decision away from you and to your client, and it affects the amount of tax you pay. But let's not dwell on it.
Yeah, get that right. So it's out the way. It baffled, because of the world we're in. When you're talking to someone outside of the recruitment world and they're talking about their work situation, and you kind of go, oh yeah, so IR35 then, and they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, how do you not know about this? But it's, so like I said, if you don't know,
yeah. I'm here to help.
Cool. Okay, but there's so much more to you than that, Julia, isn't there?
Yeah.
So much more. So you've recently launched a podcast.
Yes, well, not just one podcast, but two. So I'm issuing 2 podcasts a week, one for agency workers and one for self-employed people. So the one for agency workers is empowering agency workers. And we've just done some stuff on there around job interviews, interview skills, presentation skills, what jobs are there in the market, you know, what's going on behind the scenes. And then the one that's all about self-employment, we've done all sorts of things. Very recently, we've had some marketing people on. I don't know where I found them from, but they went down really well. So that,
I was going to say, did they say anything useful? Probably not.
No, it was really useful. And then this week's one is actually really interesting. And it was I was talking to someone who is an introvert, and she set up her own business about 7 years ago now. And it was all about being an introvert, setting up your business, going self-employed, going it alone in an extrovert's world. And that one was a nice story, actually. And it kind of says to everyone, well, look, if you're introverted or shy, you can still make a go of it. And actually, I posted it on Monday, and within probably an hour, I had a couple of responses immediately from people going, oh my God, this really resonates with me. And with people that I never realized were introverted. And you know, it was similar to their story. So it just shows actually the power of a podcast, because I liked that story and I thought it was a good one. And then you put it out there, and then all of a sudden it's reaching people and making a difference. It's absolutely fantastic.
Awesome. That's great. I haven't listened to that one yet, because I have quite a few podcasts I listen to in different worlds. But yeah, that sounds great. And there's an automatic assumption that to be self-employed, you've got to be kind of, you know, out front and center and making lots of noise. So it could put people off that way. So sounds great.
Yeah, and you know, if I can just by what I'm doing make a difference to a few people, I think it's massive, because whatever work you do, so my Iwork is about anyone who's working but not in permanent employment, and all of our working lives fill way too much time, actually, probably in a lot of people's cases, but it's so important. And you know, if I can just help a few people get the type of work that they want and deserve, then that's what it's all about for me.
So with the people that you've sort of been working with and the challenges that they've shared with you, what are the key things that sort of are coming up again and again, in terms of perhaps where people are then maybe I don't want to say they're making mistakes or going wrong and stuff like that, but maybe they've not had the right advice, or they've thought they should do A. And, you know, we have people come to us and they're like, you know, I've registered my business this morning and I want to do all this stuff marketing wise. And I'm like, hold on, you're on day one of business. Yes, I want your money, but I want you to create a business that's surviving. And like, maybe let's just start here and build up to that big picture so that it's manageable for you. So yeah, the people you're engaging with at the minute, what are the things that just keep cropping up? What's the advice you're giving again and again?
Yeah, I mean, often people aren't necessarily getting their contracts correct. So particularly when you're starting off and maybe you're doing a bit of freelancing and you're maybe doing some stuff on the side, and then it kind of then feels awkward to formalize that. So you might be doing, I don't know. I literally don't know. We cover everything on all sectors. So you know, you might be doing something in your spare time, and then you think, well, actually I want to make a living out of this, and then you've built up a relationship with somebody that you've been working for, and then you've got to put terms in place, and that feels awkward, and you sort of then have to backpedal a bit to do that. And I would say to anyone, just do it, because whoever you've already got that relationship with, they will understand, because you've got to make a living and you've got to have these terms, the payment terms, and you've got to be clear about who owns what in terms of intellectual property and all of that stuff. And it's really important, but it's that kind of more boring back office stuff that gets forgotten when you're just starting up. And so that side of things, getting the right kind of structure in place, whether it's a limited company or a sole trader or a partnership, and all of that kind of more boring stuff is what people aren't prioritizing, because of course they have the idea and they have the idea and they want to get out there, and of course they do, but yeah, you kind of got to get your house in order. And the other thing that has always surprised me for years is people don't know their own finances. So they don't know where their money's coming from. Well, they do know where their money's coming from. Sorry, I'm being ridiculous, but they don't know necessarily exactly how much they need to be profitable or kind of what their costs are. And there's kind of some really basic financial stuff that it's almost people are scared to look at their financial position. And there's loads and loads of really good software out there. Just normal banking software will help you to identify, your cash flow and things like that, which people just sort of are too busy doing the doing, I guess, rather than just spending like 20 minutes, half an hour a week on this sort of thing to give them the knowledge they need.
Do you know, that's really interesting about the numbers thing, because it's like you've got to know your numbers, right?
Yeah.
And I think I've got a good hold on our figures, and I know that there's like loads of stats on it, but I'm really crap with numbers. I've got about 1 million spreadsheets, and as we all know, Christina loves a spreadsheet. But it's really interesting when you're talking to business owners who are, I don't know, it's like they just, I'm like, oh, okay, but what's your stat for this? What's your stat for that? And they're like, well, I don't look at that stuff. And then I think, is it just me? Like, am I just like, is it just the way that I'm wired, that I really rely on all of those things? And I always talk about creativity. So Mark, for example, Mark is creative in that, visual, and we use little lines and say, Mark makes things look pretty and stuff like that. But I guess my creativity is more kind of putting a Gantt chart together or creating a spreadsheet and making stuff work in that way rather than the visual aspects.
I think it's hard though. I mean, I know, like, doing these podcasts, for example, I don't always I'm scared to look at the listening figures because, I like my content and I almost don't want to know if other people don't. And so I don't know if that's the same for kind of facts and figures, but just for me, I mean, you have to make yourself do it, and you do it. And, like Google Analytics for your website or, whatever it might be, there's so much information out there. If you're brave enough to look at it, you can really, really use it to your advantage. And so, yeah, you have to kind of force yourself. But once then you're able to deal with it. If your listing figures or whatever aren't quite where you want them to be, then if you know that, you can put in strategies to deal with it.
Absolutely. So we've got a bit of a mix of us here. So Mark had a business previously, which became part of Green Umbrella. Amanda works with us on a freelance basis. We're very transparent about that. Emily's employed, Jane's employed, although Jane's husband has his own business. So what questions have we got for Julia, whether it's related to this or related to the podcast? We can really pick her brains now. So what have we got?
We'll do, because I got loads of free advice when I interviewed you guys for my podcast, so I owe you.
I guess my question, it wasn't really sort of obviously business related so much. It was more to do with the podcast and I guess more curiosity rather than anything. But it was around how you chose your podcast guests and whether you sort of actively go out and find them yourself or whether quite a lot of people approach you and how you vet them really, whether you'd like them to take part or not.
So at the moment, I am pretty much working with people that I already know. So having built up quite a broad network of different people, then I am kind of exploiting my network first. I'll be quite honest about that. But also there are some people that I've interviewed who I haven't known, but I just do a lot of research about them. So I think actually when we were chatting on one of the marketing ones, you sort of do your research and you kind of follow them in Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever. And it does take me probably about a month or so of kind of digging beneath the surface for me to be happy that it's someone that I want to interview. And then I'll have like a brief chat with them where it's just a kind of finding out about them sort of thing. And then I will then be like, yeah, okay, I want to do it. Now, I haven't been in that situation where I've had to have a chat and then say, no, I don't want to interview you. But that will crop up. And the thing is, it's my podcast, it's my name, and I'm not gonna, you have to protect that. So I don't want to have that awkward conversation, but I will, because it means too much to me not to.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's like, I hate confrontation, so I would hate that conversation, but because it is your name, it's your personal brand, you have, like you said, you have to protect it, and you have to, if you don't think someone's the right fit, you could tell them in a nice way, I guess.
Exactly. If someone's too promotional or something like that, that wouldn't go down well. I have absolutely no problem whatsoever with kind of putting the links in to contact people and talking about their business or whatever. But if it's just a complete sales pitch, then even if I've done a recording, at that point I'll just say, no, I'm really sorry, I've listened back, we can do it again, but I'm not publishing it. And I don't know if you had this, Christina, actually, because I know you have your podcast.
So far, I've had, if I'm honest, I've had one where I just didn't feel the rapport was quite right. I did release it anyway. And in hindsight, with the experience I've got now, I don't think I would, like, if I'd have got that one now, I don't think I would have released it, because it just, and they weren't pitching or anything like that, but it was like, I asked an open question and I got a closed answer. So I just kind of felt like there were a lot of like just awkward pauses. And the guys that edit my podcast are really, really cool. They're really good. Some of the podcasts, like some of the solo episodes I've done where I've thought that just sounds like it's just really awkward. I've kind of said to them, if it's just really crap, just bin it, I'll do something else. And so far, it's like it's weird listening to your own podcast, actually, but so far so good. But I am waiting, at some point there was going to be that episode where you just go, I'm not using it. I'm not prepared to put that out there, and not quite sure how I'll manage that one when that one comes. So it's interesting.
I'll let you know if I get there first, but hopefully neither of us will. I mean, it's good to think about it in advance, though, and it's good. I just think it's important because it's part of you and your brand, so it's got to be right, hasn't it?
Yeah, and I think it is about, like you said, it's the guest you attract. It's making sure that it is, you've researched the guest. It is someone with a story to tell. Yeah. And some, that they are bringing something to the table, because I don't think we want to interview people where we're kind of, I don't know what the phrase is. It's like, we don't want to drag them along with us. No. We're inviting them on our podcast so that they can shine. And I think that's the thing. Can't think what that phrase is. It's going to bug me.
I have no idea.
Like at 1:05 this afternoon when we.
Fantastic. So Jane, have you got anything for Julia? Any questions? Anything cropped up?
Yeah, only really sort of. Obviously, in the pandemic, a lot of people have lost their jobs. And so I just wonder, do you get sort of more people maybe coming to you for advice who have lost their job and therefore are, oh my God, what am I going to do now? I'll have to be self-employed and do this, that and the other. Or is it more people who thought, wow, this is an opportunity to do that thing I've always wanted to do, and then they decide to go self-employed or freelancer at least? Or is it a mix?
It is a mix, but actually, a couple of people who I've interviewed for the podcast who have gone self-employed, like the one I was just saying about the person who is an introvert. She works in PR, but she's an introvert, and anyway, she set up her own business. I know, really, really interesting. But yeah, she said, well, when she was made redundant a number of years ago, and that was kind of the catalyst for setting up self-employed, and so many people say that, and almost everyone I speak to who's been running their business for a number of years say that actually being made redundant was the best thing that happened to them. And I had a whole conversation about this, and I'm not sure I put it on the podcast in the final edit, actually, because it felt a bit insensitive because of the number of people that are redundant at the moment, and they probably can't see their way to it being a positive. But yeah, the most people that I'm working with are those people that have been made redundant. They're kind of looking at, well, what do I want to do? What's my passions? You know, what did I like about my previous role, but what did I like less? And what do I want to kind of leave behind in an ideal world? So it is much more around those people rather than the latter. So yeah, it's really interesting, and it's just, you know, really refreshing and helping people to kind of look back on what they've done and that whole kind of career thing. And there's so much pressure on people to have a career, and actually you don't have to. You can work as an agency temp forevermore if you want to. And who cares? Just because there's society pressure to be successful. Well, if your choice of being successful is working on different temporary roles, who cares? Do that, you know. And there's a lot of pressure on people to just be getting some income at the moment, and so people are trying to sell themselves into roles that might not be immediately apparent that they're right for, but they're equally well qualified and able to do it as someone else. And it's, I don't know, it's a real mix. I just want people to do work that they enjoy. That's ultimately what I'm trying to achieve.
Fair enough. It's funny actually, because I ended up sort of falling into freelancing for Green Umbrella because I had children and I was just being a stay-at-home mum. And I just fell into it, and now I'm employed by them. And you know, who's to say what's going to come out of what you do? I mean, I only did an hour and a half a day at first.
Fantastic.
And I turned into a full-time job. And great.
And it's perfect, and that's the probably the only good thing that's come out of the pandemic is the fact that people can work much more flexibly. And I know other commentators say that all the time, but you know, I've been home based for the last 8 years at least, and for me it's kind of quite normal. And I don't get why people are struggling working from home. I've always loved it, but people are, and you know, that's fair enough. And it takes different types of people, and there are people who want to commute into the office and have that kind of bouncing off one another type of atmosphere. But for me, I've for the most part been okay in lockdown, you know, working from home. It's kind of nice to be able to get on. So, you know, I've completely gone off on a tangent. Sorry, I've just started rabbiting on.
That's what happens on Live Lunch. We're just lucky no one's sworn yet, you know.
I'm sure they will.
There's been no innuendos, no swearing. We're almost 25 minutes in. We're actually letting the side down. I'm not going to lie. But Joe, it's just to sort of go back on what you've said and put a comment on LinkedIn, which I'll bring up on screen. But the reality is, like, quite often success comes off of the back of, you know, some sort of adversity. So whether it, you know, I'd say, like, I know Anne, absolutely lovely lady, and you know, she had this, you know, massive event in her world that made her completely change what she was doing. And you know, she's like, this lady's up on stages talking to people, and you know, and doing some amazing things. I think she's won awards and all that sort of stuff, you know. And it is a, you know, I was made redundant from a career that I absolutely loved, and kind of went, oh God, what do I do? Went and did a degree. I should say went and started a degree. Didn't quite work out for me. I hated every second. And then was like, crap, now really what am I going to do? Bit like Jane, started working here as a freelancer, became an employee. And then, you know, now I own the damn thing, you know. It's kind of,
how did that happen?
I'm like, actually, you know, maybe it doesn't always work out for the best. I don't know. No, it's really positive. It's really positive. But you know, it is. I think sometimes we worry about being insensitive whilst people are in these very difficult situations. But sometimes it's because we've got that little bit of hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? But I think it is, sometimes it's just the fact that we know usually out of these situations good things come, and it's tricky. It's tricky.
I don't think most people's careers ever quite go to plan. I mean, when I was at uni years ago, I was going to be a scientist, and I didn't realize until my third year doing my dissertation that actually I was only good in theory, and actually doing the practical work day to day of being a scientist was not my thing at all. And that was a real shock, because I was doing degree biology with genetics, and so I was a proper science geek, and I loved it, but I couldn't do it. My experiments didn't work, and I was so frustrated, and I was just like, oh my God, what am I going to do with myself? And so anyway, I finished university, thought about doing lots of different things. You try different things, and then your career just kind of goes from there. And it doesn't matter if you don't have a clear, defined path to follow.
So here's an interesting question then. So I thought I was going to be a music teacher, then went into hospitality and event management, and now I'm in marketing. So Julia's done that kind of like the science thing to where she is now. What about you, Jane? What's your path been?
Well, I mean, right at the very start, I was also a scientist for Dulux Paint. And after 10 years doing that, I kind of got a bit bored of having my hands dirty all the time. And then I went into IT. So I went back to uni and studied for business IT. Then I worked in IT for Carphone Warehouse. Then I had my kids. And then I ended up here, and I never in a million years thought I'd need to do anything in marketing. So yeah, here I am.
What about you, Mark? Obviously, I know what your degree's in, but go on.
Well, so my degree is in human geography. So I thought I wanted to be a town planner. I was due to do a master's in European or environmental law, but I decided I wanted to go out to do that. So I never did quite get around to that. So then I ended up working as a temp in a warehouse for a year, sort of after uni, didn't know what I wanted to do. And then someone who I worked with, her partner at the time was working for printers, and he said, I just need some help. Why don't you come over, have a chat? So I ended up going over there and staying there for sort of 16 years after that, and learning on the job.
It's a long chat.
Yeah, that's why I was laughing.
And then after that, started my own business, and then joined GU. So yeah, it wasn't the route I thought I'd ever go in. Never did anything really creative at school or uni. So it was all sort of on the job learning for me, really.
Emily's still really young, so she's like...
Really?
I was waiting for you to come to me, and I was like, look, my journey's much shorter.
You're already in your dream job, right?
Yeah. No, so I guess mine's really short, to be honest. I held off. I guess this is where it changes a little bit. So between college and university, a lot of my friends went straight into university. But at that point, I didn't want to pay for a degree that I then didn't want to use later on down the line. So what I actually did is I took 2 years out in between. So when I started uni, I was actually 2 years older than everyone else that I was with, basically, apart from one person that was older than me. But yeah, I knew I wanted to do something creative because I've always been creative since I was little, but I didn't know what that was going to be. I didn't know if it was going to be interior design or PR or marketing or journalism. I wasn't sure. So anyway, long story short, I still didn't decide after the 2 years. So what I did is I started a degree that I could do all of those things, basically barring the interior design, mix it all together and choose modules for each section. So I guess when I left university, I wanted to go into fashion PR, actually, which is different to what I do now, but it's extremely competitive. I applied for hundreds and hundreds of jobs, and I think I got through to about 2 interviews, maybe. It was crazy. So yeah, then I moved to Edinburgh, and I worked at the Open University for a while as a bit of a stopgap, and then I started working here. So now I'm in marketing and social media, but I think it's actually worked out for the better because PR, although in fashion PR and things, I have friends that work in that industry, and I don't think it's quite what they expected it to be. So therefore, I think it might not have been quite what I expected either. Whereas what I actually do now, I really enjoy, and I think it's something that's constantly changing, and that's something that I really like in a career, and sort of learning new things all the time as well. So I think so far it's worked out for the best, which is good.
Best job you've ever had.
Yeah, exactly. I'm really sorry. Someone's been knocking on my door that whole time, so I'm just going to have to run and check who that is. Sorry, 1 second.
She's not. She's going to go and throw up or something now. And yeah, she's like, I've said all these nice things. I'm like, oh. Right, so Amanda, because we've done everyone else, we should do yours as well. But then I want to dig into part of yours a little bit deeper as well, actually, because I think there's something to talk about there.
Okay, so I was listening to everyone else. It's really interesting, actually, finding out people's paths. I guess I've worked in marketing pretty much all my career. So in some form or another, I started, so when I left uni, I just grabbed like one of the first roles that came along, which was customer service. And, you know, while I was studying, I was always working in kind of hospitality and behind bars and in restaurants and stuff. So, yeah, and I do think there's a big good crossover between customer service and marketing, because you're learning about customer needs and what drives them, their decisions, that kind of thing. But yeah, so that was like 20 odd years ago. So I've always worked in marketing. But when I was little, you know, when people kind of go, what do you want to be when you grow up? I used to want to be a writer. So I knew from a young age, because I remember saying to my parents, what do you call somebody who writes books? They were like, writer, I suppose, but author. So I think, you know, complex there, Amanda. Yeah, and I guess kind of what I do, because, you know, most of the I do, there's a lot of client facing and there's lots of strategy in there. When it comes to copywriting, a lot of that comes to me. But so I've made the journey from being full-time employed in different roles to being freelance and self-employed in the last pushing 2 years now, actually, which is scary. It's gone quickly.
So that's the bit I think is worth digging into, because I think that it's quite a shift going from being employed to self-employed, just in terms of, you know, there's all the things you need to think about, as you mentioned earlier, Julia. But I think there is also this kind of like mindset shift as well, because you no longer have those kind of corporate rules that you need to adhere to and that sort of stuff. So I think like the challenge for me when I made that move was the fact that just not having that structure, that there wasn't someone else's structure being enforced on me. So I think that was the thing that was my biggest like learning thing, if you like. It wasn't really a learning moment. It was just something I needed to sort of readjust to. But what's it been for you, Amanda? Is there anything that sticks out? And then Julia, what kinds of things are you talking to people about that, you know, people that are in that situation right now, what they're going to have to get their head around, basically?
Yeah, it's a massive learning curve. And there are times when it can feel quite scary and overwhelming. But so my journey to you, there was a lot of, you know, call it karma, call it just being in the right place at the right time, or the fact that we'd both intelligently networked. So when I left my previous in-house role, I just kind of knew the time was right to go. It was a sort of, if I don't go now, I'll stay there forever. And it wasn't what I wanted to do forever. And it coincided with Christina, you buying Green Umbrella. So I think literally it was a conversation on the Friday to say, well, give me a ring next week when when you'll be the owner. So there was a great kind of crossover in timing. But
we had lunch. Do you remember? We went for lunch, and it was like the most awkward lunch, because we both obviously wanted to say something, but neither of us could talk about the thing we needed to talk about, because we're both under like NDAs and that sort of stuff. And it was like, so how's work? It's all right. How is it with you? Yeah, it's okay too.
And then it was, we really should do this again. Yeah, do you think maybe after the 1st of April? That's a good idea.
Yeah, let's do it on the 1st of April.
So the timing was great. But yeah, in terms of structure, you're right. There was loads I didn't know. I'm quite fortunate in that my husband has run his own business. He's been self-employed, been a contractor pretty much all his life. But what I learned quite quickly, there's a difference between industries. So he's an engineer, he's out on site, you know, working quite industrial premises, versus me with a computer. And that's kind of all I need. So there was often times where he'd go, no, you're looking at this all wrong. You need to send your pro forma invoice beforehand. You need to get your deposit for all the tools you've got to buy. And I was kind of, well, I don't need that, because basically until I've given them the blog or the piece of copywriting or the web copy, but equally, he was kind of right. Well, you'll need your laptop. You need this, this, and this. This is how you structure your day. One thing I suppose I found out this year is that your first year, when you do your self-assessment, they take a year and a half's worth of tax. So when I got my tax bill, I was like, oh, Jesus, this is quite hefty. And I didn't know that. And there was a lot of things I didn't know. And like you say, with structure, I was so used to a pension contribution going out. It sounds like this is all quite kind of probably not the most exciting stuff, but you don't necessarily think about it because you're so focused on the doing. So I didn't pay into a pension for, I don't know, nearly 2 years now. I've only just, So but it just wasn't on my radar. And thinking about what I was, hours you've got, you don't get paid for sick leave or holiday. It was with the, I can't remember the exact term for the chancellors, people who are self-employed. There was kind of a, what was the term? It was like payments coming through, but you had to have been self-employed for a certain amount of time. That didn't cover me because I was relatively new, but fortunately, we had some good conversations at Green Umbrella, and you kind of put some parameters in place, didn't we, Christina, to say, look, we don't know what's going to happen with the business, whether customers will come and go, but as it goes, because we're great at what we do, we had lots of work, so it was fine. So I'm really lucky that I wasn't affected, but it could have been really scary. And I think there's a lot of people out there that were, well, what about us? I've been, self-employed for 18 months, but I'm not covered by these payments from the government. So yeah, it's a massive learning curve, but equally there's loads of pros about it. So, I can flex my time. Sorry, carry on, Christina.
Oh no, I was going to say, so like Judy, obviously we've covered quite a few things there. Is there anything left? What other things that are?
One of the things people don't realise when they set up and work for themselves is the need for that support network, and whatever that looks like. And so, every business I've run for the last however many years, I've always run it like it's my own, which isn't always really a good thing. So I mean, I've always been very used to having a support network who, you're kind of working lots of hours or whatever, and just someone who's there to go, it's okay. And when you're really kind of pressured, and whether you're running a business or whether you're whatever you're doing, working for yourself, there are those times of pressure. There are those times where just everything needs doing all at once somehow. And how do you get through that? You work out what you need to kind of deal with that. So for me, people that know me know I've got dogs. I go out with the dogs, and the dogs are the most sensible, wise counsel in the world. So if I've got something to think about and I'm not sure what I'm doing, it's the morning dog walk that gives me my answers. Then I've got a brilliantly supportive husband, and and the stuff that happens for me is the same for other people. So everyone, all of you on this call today will have your support networks, and it's those support networks that are ever more important when you're setting up by yourself, because it is a minefield. Like Amanda was saying, about 18 months worth of tax. Well, you don't know that until you are looking at going self-employed, and by the time you're looking at going self-employed, you've already got some ideas, and you're already kind of part way down that journey mentally, if you like, anyway. It's always too late by the time you're looking at it, and it's just a fact that you just have to deal with it. So yeah, I think don't underestimate the impact on you as an individual if you're thinking of going self-employed and having that support network. And it can be really tough because of the pandemic and all that, but everyone wants to help, and even reach out to people that you don't know so well. They will want to help. No one wants to see anyone fail. And also, you don't have to be physically in a room for someone to be there to support. So, we've all got kind of generations of relatives and friends and that are now kind of quite okay with chatting online and that sort of thing. So, I'm just chatting on now. You can tell I'm quite used to it now. Just chatting online, it seems normal.
Do you know, the support network thing is so important, and whether it is sort of spouses or friendship groups, whether it is sort of peer groups as well. So whether it's through a networking group or just people that from your kind of like your previous professional life, or whatever it might be. Sometimes it's your competitors. We have a competitor that I do WhatsApp, or we probably jump on a Zoom every sort of 6 to 8 weeks, and it's 30 minutes, just like, how is it for you? So yeah, do you know what? It's like, yeah, we get loads of inquiries, but no one's saying go ahead, or oh God, I have this, how do you do your how do you do your proposals? Because we've had this come up, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you're not giving each other your secrets or anything like that, but it's that kind of trusted friend thing. And like I said, I actually think it's quite healthy sometimes if it is a competitor and, someone that you'd be happy to lose business to, because it just gives you quite a different view of the world as well.
Yeah, I love that, actually, that whole collaborating with your competitors, which sounds unnatural. I was going to say ridiculous, but it's not, because it works. And I've seen it in kind of the umbrella industry. When I first joined, even getting people in the same room was a bit of a challenge. But now there are kind of groups that do kind of network amongst themselves, and it's not down to me. It's just times have changed, and it's just that they're more used to networking and sharing information in that way. And I'm guessing the same is probably true of the recruitment sector. And nobody wants to see their competitors fail. It's like you say, well, you do if it depends who your competitor is. I'll just very quickly retract that sentence. But you do have your good competitors who you're kind of like, oh, okay, if I lose business to them, yeah, and so long as what you're doing is different anyway, and you're true to yourself, that's what matters.
I think one thing I've learned as well is that when you're first self-employed, and I think a lot of people will probably make this mistake, is you want to say yes to everything as well. Because you're so grateful for the business and you're excited to do it, and it's so easy to go, yeah, I can do that, and I can do it this week. And you can't. There are times there, I remember going through a phase, because I wasn't sure how much work I would have with Green Umbrella, and I had some other agencies, and I kind of literally put down, right, well, how much are each of them paying for the job that I'm doing? Which ones do I like working with? Which ones are giving me the most interesting jobs? So obviously GU was out on top. When I had to go,
she's only saying that because her invoice is due.
There were points where I was almost working full time, and it sort of goes in peaks and troughs. But again, from an IR35 point of view as well, when I'm kind of balancing everything. But yeah, you need to be able to say no, from the point of view of, you don't want to let your clients down, and also you don't want to burn out, because it's too easy just to keep working through and not take a break. But if you're working in collaboration, at least you can say to the potential client, I can't help you just because I've got so much work on. The lead time is 6 weeks, 10 weeks, whatever. But I know this brilliant person, they do, or we're like peas in a pod, they do the same as me. You'll be in great hands with them. And I just think there's room for everyone. And it's far better to be able to give a recommendation than just go, sorry, I can't help you, hop off to Google and find somebody else. And hopefully what goes around comes around. If your competitor then is like, well, how great is that? Then they might push work your way that they don't have scope for, or is not their area of expertise. So yeah, definitely network counts.
Julia, do you think is the bigger challenge to hold yourself back from the excitement and saying yes, 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 or is the bigger challenge not feeling like you can say no when you're in early stages of business?
Not being able to say no is something that I think a lot of people struggle with, and alongside that is also a bit about knowing your worth. So pricing yourself so that you are being paid a fair price, essentially, is really important. And that also, if you're pricing yourself perhaps too low, then that can contribute to that feeling of, I need to say yes to everything, and I just want to get established. But actually, knowing your worth and raising your prices is massive, and it's really difficult to do. But yeah, so it's really easy for me to sit here and go, oh yeah, price yourself properly. But it is important, because the people that do price themselves properly, therefore they're able to balance things, and they feel kind of more able to kind of absorb themselves in the project and do the work, etc. Whereas if you've always got that feeling that you're doing it cheaply or for free, don't get me started on that, that's a whole other thing, then you're then less likely to do the job well, and it's a bit of a spiral of decline, I think. Sorry, that sounded really miserable there, spiral of decline.
No, but you're right. It is that, and I just thought that's such a good phrase to use, isn't it? Because you do get caught, and then we're kind of coming up. Well, we're just over 45 minutes, so we should be drawing this to a close. And you said don't get you started on free, but maybe we should get you back again just to talk about the free. Because that is, from a marketing perspective, a lot of people, when they're looking to launch, they're like, well, actually, if I do some stuff for free, then, or if I do this and I give someone a free whatever with it, it's like, actually, sometimes the word free just massively devalues what it is that you've got in the first place. And it's something from a marketing perspective. It's an obvious thing to do, but strategically, quite often it's not the right thing to do.
And
so
it depends. It does depend. So you might be not being paid for something, but you might agree to do something in return for some promotion, some PRs, some testimonials, whatever it might be. That is not the same as what I was saying in terms of doing it for free. I mean, totally. So a lot of freelancers are like, oh, well, you need to build your portfolio. You do this for me for free. You're like, no, it's still my time. Don't you value my time? And I don't know if any of you have had that experience as kind of when you as being freelance, whether people do expect you to do stuff for free, but it does seem to crop up quite a lot right now, because businesses don't have the money, I suppose.
Do I think sometimes it's expectations. So Mark, with like logo designs and stuff like that, it's like, well, could you do us an example of what you're thinking of? Well, it's like, well, no, if you accept the quote and pay us the money, then you can have that, because otherwise, it's like, why would you want me to do the work before you've even accepted the quote?
Yeah. I mean, bigger jobs, there's experiences where people do need to pitch, but we're talking, thousands and thousands of pounds worth of work. But, for a job that's, maybe a few £100s, you're not going to actually do the work to get the work.
No, no, it's insulting, I think.
I think as well, when people are, it's that thing of, okay, we've quoted it, and they're like, is that your best price? And I'm like, yeah, because why would I have not given you my best price in the first place? It's like, really, why would I waste my own time?
Well, the best price would be £10 more, surely, for you.
Yeah.
That's it, right? Honestly, it's like, if I don't like you, we'll have a conversation. I'm like, stick a tenner on it.
I do know a business completely outside of our businesses, completely different sector, where they get given an opportunity to pitch for something, and they kind of don't even want the work, so they just put in the most ridiculous price. Then if they do get the work, they're quids in, because they don't want to do the job. But I'm not suggesting that as a strategy, by the way, for everyone. It won't always work, but yeah, I do know a particular business that does that. That's and yeah, it works for them, but most of the time they do put in a proper price, to be fair.
Fantastic. Cool. Okay, so we always try and keep this under an hour, so I'm going to wrap that up there. Julia, thank you so much. This has been a really, really good conversation. So Paul's just put in the comments then, that explains his bills. So yeah, love that. Mwah, love you, Paul. So Julie, yes, thank you. So tell everyone very quickly again where they can find you. Where should they be reaching out? Give us the details.
So I mean, with the name Julia Kermo, there aren't many of me. So if you Google me, you'll probably find me. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. And my company is Iwork. The website's iwork.co.uk. So yeah, we're trying to build a community. And actually, that's quite hard when you're starting afresh to building a community, but absolutely loving it. And anyone who is self-employed or work or a temp or working but not in employment, we're here to help you.
Excellent. So we have to do a little wave at the camera and smile sweetly so Emily can take her screenshot and then I'll end the broadcast.